Yeah, hi there. It's Trevor Davis of Our Father's House, and this is kind of part two of the last intervention. So it's really about Moses bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt and sending them on to their own land. They were incredible times, and what I'm trying to bring here is they went through difficult times. I mean, they had a word from God. They knew that God was going to deliver them. They knew where He was going to take them. He knew what He was going to provide for them. They knew all of that. But then they had to live through 10 different plagues to get Pharaoh or the rulers of the land to let them go. I mean, are there parallels even in that today? Well, of course, there's plenty of pharaohs. What is Pharaoh? Pharaoh represents the rulers over the land. So that could be governments, it could be presidents, it could be leaders, whatever they are, but they rule over the people. And often in today, in modern day world, often they rule over and against Christians, against the church. I don't know of a Christian leader in the world today that's really standing up for the people of God and for the church and so on. The church is having to rise up in its own right to say, well, we are going to hold God's law above your law. And then they get into all kinds of difficulty and challenges as a result of that. Look, some years ago, I spent some years in a church environment, building a church, pioneering a church and building it up. And we had many, many people who got saved and came to the Lord. And I remember it's a bit of a highlight, I guess, in my ministry at that time. It stands out. We had a lot of people that came out of disruptive backgrounds. Some of them came out of witchcraft environments and demonic stuff, and we saw many people experience deliverance from oppression, from demonic possession, and so on. There's one person in particular. One day I was asked if I'd go to the home of this person because they had committed themselves to Christ, but they were having a very, very difficult time breaking through. And so the question came, is there something maybe in the house that's that he is in bondage or whatever that is? So I went into the house with somebody and we went through the house to identify things that were there that actually had a hold on this person and her husband, had a hold on their lives. I mean, they were in bondage. But as you went through the house, there were all these different idols or gods, if you want, and they were all there. So I asked them, do you mind if I remove all of those and you'll have freedom in your life from there? So they gave me permission to do that. Well, I had a great big carton full of these idols and things that were in that house and that I took away. I actually took them down to the church property and lit a fire and incinerator, and I burnt the whole lot of them. And she got free. I've been in real estate for a number of years, and you would be surprised, well, maybe you wouldn't, but you'd be surprised at how many homes that you go into, even Christian homes, we can't separate this, who have gods in their house, who have Buddhas in their house, sitting there as a kind of an ornament or whatever that is. I mean, but they are gods. And anything we give ourselves to and we look upon in the place of the God is a god. So let's kind of understand a little bit about the world we live in today. What could be gods? Well, here's a few. I just picked them up. I actually just, well, you can go do this on the computer. Just put modern day gods. These are some of the things that come up. Self. We're a self-God. That's the whole New Age thing, of course. We are God. We are God in ourselves. You just look deep into yourself and you'll have the answer, because you are your own God. That's a God. That's against God. He says, I have a place in your heart. It's me that should be in here. Money is a god. We bow down to it. A lot of the nations are ruled. A lot of political persuasion is achieved by offering money. Money becomes a god. Sex is a god. We see that right across the world today. And it's a god. Science is a god. We use science to be able to do something, and we replace it with God who can do everything. We must have proof. We must have proof about God, of course. That's why the scientists sometimes often fall short, because the God dimension is not there. Religion can be a god. We bow down to a religious system. There's plenty of those in the world. About 1 billion that I can identify. A family can be a God. It's something that places God again. Health can be a God. We do all of what we do. We consume in developing and growing and building our bodies, whatever that is. Substances can replace God here, so it becomes God. So that can be all your drugs. That's greater than the power of God. Beauty is a God. We bow down to it. So just check your tally tonight when you go on. See how many of these things are absolutely loaded into what we see and what we're supposed to hear. Education is a God. We hold it above God. We hold it above the God. We educate him out of it. We throw God out of the schools. Why? Because our education is more important than him. Who's God anyway? He knows nothing, can't be seen, doesn't touch. That's what they say. Sport is a God. My goodness me, massive God across the nations. Our career can be a God. I tell you when I like to think of it, but a ministry can be a God. I can give you unfortunately, too many instances from a ministry perspective where their ministry and who they are and the profile of who they are, they become their own God. We bow down to these people. But here's what God says. This is important to understand here. He says in Exodus 20 verse 3, he says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." That's part of the 10 Commandments. Exodus 23:13. "And all these things that I've said to you to be circumspect, and make no mention of the names of other gods." So don't worship them, don't even talk about them. That's a good thing, isn't it? Don't even talk about. Deuteronomy 5 and verse 7 says, Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Judges 10 and 13 says, "Yet ye have forsaken me, and you have served other gods." That's where God gets upset. You forsake me to serve all these gods. Well, then have your gods. And then he goes on a little further, very interesting. When you see in Psalm 115, verse 1, read down through here with me, down through to verse 8. This is what it says. "Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to your name we give glory because of your mercy, because of your truth. Why should the Gentiles say, so where is your God?" Eh? The Gentiles, what are they? The unbelievers, they want to see a God. That's why they go for a God in themselves or an idol or something, but let's go on. But our God is in heaven, and he does whatever he pleases. Their gods, Gentiles' gods, their idols, gods are silver and gold, and the work of their hands, what they create, becomes their God. They have mouths, but they don't speak. They have ears, but they don't see. They have ears, but they don't hear. They have noses, but they can't smell. They have hands, but they can't handle. They have feet, but they can't walk. They do mutter through their throat. I mean, so what's he say? What's the God? What is the God that you have today that is greater than the God that you think you can't touch because he's not seen? No, but we understand God by faith through the word of God. We hear him, we see him, we know him by the word of the Lord, by the word of God. And he goes on, notice at the end of all of these challenges, God required of his people to gather to the homes as a place of protection, a place of fellowship, a place of eating of the lamb. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves today. We come together that we might worship the God and get strength from one another and encouragement to lift up God in all that he does. I'm reminded of Isaiah 55, and it says there, God's ways are not our ways. If you are bewildered because of what goes on, I mean, you go back to the times of Pharaoh, we're having a look here, and of Moses. Did you know that I think it's the first 3 plagues that Moses brought and to test Pharaoh to let the people go, his magicians could reproduce exactly the same. It was a counterfeit. Today, it's the same thing today. We need to be able to discern what is God and what is witchcraft. What is coming against us here? I wonder, do we really have that discernment? I mean, discernment to know what is New Age and what is real God. to know what is a Christian and what is a born-again Christian. Are there differences? You bet there is. If we're not a born-again Christian, we are a Christian by name. We're by mental descent that we make a decision, so I believe that God exists. But it's not a born-again experience where we have a relationship with God and the Spirit of God comes into our heart to lead us and guide us and to prompt us and lead us along the way. Can I just say, this is God's intervention. How does God intervene? We remove the things that separate from him, and God comes right in the midst, and he'll bring deliverance to you, into your house and to your home. Oh, God bless you. I trust it's helpful to you today. Let's see this and understand that if you call unto God, he will answer. If you draw near to him, he will draw near to you. If you seek him, he will be found by you. Search him out. Discuss this. Share it with somebody else. Remove the gods from your house. Remove all witchcraft stuff. Throw them all out. Throw it out of the house. Why? Because those are spiritual powers that have access to your spiritual life. It's time to clean up the house, the temple. Time to clean up the church and get this stuff out of the house of God, that we might experience the deliverance that we long for. God bless you. Trust that's helpful. Send us a note. Click on subscribe. Thanks for listening. God bless.